The sun was setting, and the sky had that soft orange glow that made everything look peaceful. A tall teenager named Jaden was walking home from basketball practice. He had his gym bag over his shoulder, earbuds in, listening to his favorite playlist. His shoes scraped lightly against the sidewalk as he took the same route he did every evening. It was quiet except for the distant hum of cars and a few dogs barking somewhere down the block. Jaden wasn't thinking about anything serious. Mostly he was hungry and tired, thinking about what leftovers might be in the fridge. He had a game coming up next week and felt good about how he'd played in practice that day. Everything felt normal, just another calm evening after a long day. As he crossed a small intersection, he noticed a police car parked near the corner. The headlights were on, pointing toward the road. He didn't pay much attention to it at first. Police cars were a common sight in the neighborhood lately. But as he walked past, he felt that strange sense of being watched. The kind of feeling that makes you straighten your back a little even when you know you've done nothing wrong. Jaden glanced to the side. The officer in the driver's seat was looking straight at him. Their eyes met for a split second, and Jaden quickly looked away, pretending to check his phone. He turned down another street, the one that led directly home. That's when he heard the sound of tires rolling slowly behind him. The low hum got louder. He turned around and saw the police car following at walking speed. His chest tightened. Maybe it was just a coincidence, he told himself. Maybe they were patrolling. He kept walking, trying to act casual even though his heart was beating faster now. The car came to a stop beside him and the passenger side window rolled down. "Hey, you there. Stop for a second," one of the officers called out. Jaden hesitated, pulling one earbud out. "Yes, sir?" he said, trying to sound calm. The officer stepped out of the car. "Where are you coming from?" he asked in a sharp tone. "Basketball practice," Jaden replied quietly. He pointed at the gym bag on his shoulder. "At the community center. What's in the bag?" the officer asked. "My shoes and uniform," Jaden said. He opened the zipper a little to show the contents. The second officer, still sitting in the driver's seat, was watching him closely. "You live around here?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Just a few blocks down." The first officer walked closer. "We got a report of a robbery nearby. Suspect fits your description," he said. Jaden froze for a second. "Sir, I just came from practice. You can call my coach. I didn't do anything," but the officer didn't seem to listen. "Hands where I can see them," he said firmly. Jaden lifted his hands slowly. The street was quiet, but the tension in the air was heavy. A woman walking her dog across the street stopped and looked over. A man at the corner store paused outside to see what was happening. Jaden could feel the weight of their stares, but no one said a word. The second officer stepped out now, too. "What's your name?" he asked. "Jaden Carter," he replied. His voice was steady, though inside he felt a knot forming in his stomach. "You got ID?" "It's in my bag, sir," he said. The first officer frowned. "Don't reach for it yet." He turned slightly toward his partner. "Go ahead and check the area report again," he muttered. Jaden stood still, trying to breathe normally. He'd seen videos like this online, moments that started small but turned bad fast. His mom always told him, "Stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Don't argue. Just come home safe." He remembered those words clearly. After a minute, the second officer came back from the patrol car. "Nothing yet," he said. "But dispatch said the suspect had a dark hoodie." Jaden looked down at his hoodie. Gray, not black, but close enough that it didn't matter much in the fading light. The first officer squinted. "Take the hood down." Jaden did as he was told. The cool air brushed against his forehead. "Sir, please," he said softly. "I didn't do anything. I live right there on Cedar Lane. My mom works with law enforcement. She—" "Stop talking," the officer interrupted. "We'll figure it out." Another police car appeared at the end of the block, lights flashing, but no siren. Jaden's chest tightened again. He couldn't believe this was happening. He had no record, no trouble at school, nothing that should make anyone suspect him. He had practiced hard, gone home the same way as always, and now he was being treated like a criminal. More neighbors were stepping out now, phones in hand. Someone whispered, "They're stopping that kid for no reason." The lights from the second patrol car made the scene look even more intense. The glow of red and blue reflected off nearby cars and windows. One officer started asking him more questions. Where he'd been, who he'd been with, what time he left the gym. Jaden answered each one carefully, though his throat was dry. He wanted to call his mom so badly, but he was scared that even reaching for his phone might make things worse. A few moments later, the first officer told him to set his bag on the ground. "We're just going to check it," he said. Jayden hesitated. "It's just my stuff from practice." "Put it down," the officer repeated. He placed the bag slowly on the sidewalk and stepped back. His hands were still visible. The officer unzipped it, looked through the items, and found nothing but a towel, shoes, and a water bottle. The officer's tone didn't soften, though. "You sure you weren't around Oak Ridge Avenue about 30 minutes ago?" "No, sir," Jayden said quickly. "Practice ended around 6. You can ask Coach Miller." The officer's radio crackled. The voice from dispatch came through, mentioning that the suspect from the robbery had been caught several blocks away. Different clothes, different build, different age. The two officers exchanged a quick glance. Jayden could tell they knew now he wasn't the one they were looking for. Still, neither said sorry. They just looked uncomfortable. One muttered something about routine procedure. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "Can I go now?" he asked quietly. The officer nodded slightly. "Yeah, just be careful walking at night." That sentence stung. He wanted to say something, to ask why they hadn't been careful when they stopped him, but he held it in. He picked up his bag and started walking again. As he turned the corner, his phone buzzed. It was his neighbor calling. "Jayden, are you okay?" "I saw the police talking to you." "I'm fine," he said, though his voice was shaky. "They thought I was someone else." He hung up and walked faster. His house was only a few streets away, but it felt like the longest walk of his life. He could still feel the weight of the officer's eyes on him, even though they were out of sight now. Every sound, a car door, a barking dog, made him flinch a little. When he finally reached his street, he saw his mother's car parked out front. She was home early. Relief washed over him, but another feeling followed right behind. He didn't know how to tell her what had just happened. He went inside quietly, setting his bag down by the door. The smell of dinner filled the kitchen. His mom looked up from her laptop and smiled. "Hey, kiddo." "How was practice?" she asked. Jayden forced a small smile. "It was fine," he said softly. She looked at him closer, noticing his tone. "You sure?" He nodded quickly, not wanting to worry her. "Yeah, just tired." She didn't push further, though her eyes lingered on him a little longer. "All right," she said gently. "Wash up. Dinner's almost ready." Jayden went to his room, sat on his bed, and stared at the floor. His heart was still heavy. He knew his mom worked in law enforcement, that she understood how the system worked, but he also knew she'd be furious if she found out what happened. He looked out the window toward the street. The same police car from earlier was parked 2 blocks away, still there. He didn't know if it was a coincidence or if they were watching someone else now. Either way, he couldn't shake the feeling of fear that lingered deep inside. He picked up his phone again and saw a few new messages. Friends from practice asking if he made it home okay. One saying they saw a video online of someone being stopped by police that might have been him. His stomach turned. He didn't want anyone else to see that. He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "It's over," he told himself. "You're safe now," but deep down he knew it wasn't over. Something about the way those officers looked at him, the way they spoke, made him realize how easily things could have gone wrong. He didn't run, didn't argue, didn't resist, and still he had been treated like a suspect. In that moment, sitting quietly in his room, he made a silent promise. He would tell his mother the truth. She had always told him to speak up when something wasn't right. Maybe she could help him understand why people who were supposed to protect others had made him feel so unsafe. Outside, the night grew darker. The flashing lights from the patrol car finally faded as it drove away. Inside the house, Jayden closed his eyes and tried to forget, but his mind kept replaying every word, every stare, every second he stood there under those bright police lights. And though he didn't know it yet, that night would change everything. The next day, when his mother found out what happened, the quiet street would never look the same again. The next morning, Jayden woke up later than usual. His eyes felt heavy and his mind was still replaying everything that had happened the night before. The flashing lights, the cold stares, the tension in his chest, it all came rushing back the moment he opened his eyes. For a few seconds, he just lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to convince himself that it had just been a bad dream, but it wasn't. He heard his mom moving around in the kitchen. the sound of coffee brewing and dishes clinking softly. Normally, mornings in their house were calm and filled with small chatter. She would ask about school or practice, and he would nod through breakfast, half awake but content. But today felt different. When he walked into the kitchen, his mom smiled at him the same way she always did. "Morning, sleepyhead. You're up late." He nodded and mumbled, "Yeah." She poured him some juice and looked at him carefully. "You sure you're okay? You were quiet last night." He hesitated, looking down at his glass. The truth was sitting heavy in his chest, but the words didn't come out. "Just tired," he said again. His mother gave him a long look, then turned to grab her car keys. "All right. I have to stop by the office for a few hours. You going to school or staying home today?" "I'll go," he said quickly. He didn't want her to worry, but all day at school he couldn't focus. His friends noticed something was off. During lunch, one of them leaned over and whispered, "Hey man, I think that video online is you." Jaden's head snapped up. "What video?" "Someone posted it on local news pages. It's short, but you can see the police car and everything." His stomach dropped. "You're kidding." "I'm not," his friend said quietly. "It's getting a lot of comments. People are mad." Jaden pulled out his phone under the table and searched, and there it was, a shaky clip filmed by someone across the street. You couldn't see everything clearly, but the outline of his gray hoodie and gym bag was unmistakable. The caption read, "Teen stopped by police for matching a description." His throat went dry. He hadn't asked anyone to post it, and he didn't want attention. But now people were talking, and it felt like the whole world was staring at a moment he wanted to forget. When school ended, he walked home quickly, hoping to beat his mom there. He wanted time to think, maybe even delete the video somehow. But when he turned the corner onto his street, he froze. The same police car from last night was parked down the block again. The officers were talking to someone by the patrol car. His stomach twisted, but he kept walking. He didn't want to look scared, though he felt it in every step. When he reached his house, he noticed one of his neighbors, Mrs. Thompson, standing by her fence. "Jaden, honey, I saw that video," she said softly. "Are you okay?" He forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine, just a mix-up." She nodded, but the worry in her eyes said otherwise. "Your mom knows." "Not yet," he admitted. "Maybe you should tell her," she said gently. "She deserves to know." He nodded and thanked her, then went inside. He sat on the couch staring at the TV without really watching it. His thoughts kept circling around what had happened. Every sound outside made him jump a little. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was anger too. Anger at how easily they had decided he was guilty, how fast things could have gone wrong. A few hours later, his mom came home. She looked tired but alert, still in her work suit, her badge clipped to her belt. "Hey Jay, everything good?" she asked as she set her things down. He hesitated, then finally said, "Mom, can I tell you something?" She looked up, concerned. "Of course. What's wrong?" He took a deep breath and told her everything, from the moment the police car started following him to the flashing lights, the questions, the search, and how they let him go without a single apology. She listened quietly, her expression calm but her eyes growing colder by the second. When he finished, she asked, "They stopped you on Maple Street?" He nodded. "And they searched your bag without cause?" "Yes." She leaned back in her chair, silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to make things worse," he said softly. "I thought they'd think I was being difficult." Her eyes softened then, but her voice stayed steady. "You should never have to feel afraid to ask for help, especially not from me." She stood up, grabbed her jacket, and reached for her car keys. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To talk to the precinct," she said. "They need to explain why 2 officers detained my son for walking home from practice." "Mom, please don't make it worse," he said quickly. "I won't," she said firmly. "But they need to know they can't treat anyone like that." "Not my child, not anyone's." She left the house, and Jaden watched from the window as her car pulled away. His heart pounded. He didn't know exactly what she would say or do, but he knew his mom. She didn't back down when something was unjust. At the police station, she walked in with calm authority. The front desk officer greeted her politely until she showed her credentials. "Agent Denise Carter, FBI," she said, her tone even but serious. "I'd like to speak with your watch commander regarding an incident involving 2 of your officers last night." The desk officer immediately called upstairs. Within minutes, the shift supervisor came down, clearly uneasy. "Agent Carter," he said, extending a hand. What's this about? She explained the situation step by step. No raised voice, no anger, just firm facts. The supervisor's expression grew tense as he listened. That doesn't sound right, he said finally. Do you have your son's name? She handed him her card. I do, and I expect a written report on what probable cause those officers believed they had. Meanwhile, back at home, Jaden sat by the window, checking his phone again. The video had now spread even further. Local journalists were sharing it, and there were hundreds of comments. Some defended the officers, saying they were just doing their job, but many others were outraged. People wrote things like, "This could have gone wrong in seconds, and that boy handled it better than most adults would." Jaden didn't reply to any of it. He didn't even like that people were talking about him, but part of him was grateful that someone had filmed it, that there was proof of what he'd gone through. About an hour later, his mom returned. She walked in quietly, her face unreadable. Jaden looked up. What happened? She set her bag down. They admitted there was no reason to stop you. The description didn't match, and they had no probable cause to search your belongings. So, what happens now? I filed a report, she said calmly, and I've asked for an internal review. They'll handle it. Jaden looked down. I didn't want it to turn into a big deal. She sat beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Son, when something wrong happens, staying quiet doesn't fix it. Speaking up doesn't make trouble. It makes change. For the first time since the incident, Jaden felt a little lighter, but part of him was still unsettled. What if they come back? What if they think I made a complaint? They won't, she assured him. And if they do, they'll answer to me. She smiled faintly, but there was strength in her eyes, a strength that came from years of service, from knowing how the system worked and how it sometimes failed. Later that night, they sat together on the couch. The news came on, and the local station had picked up the story. They blurred his face, but it was clear enough to recognize the scene. The anchor said the department was reviewing the actions of two officers following a mistaken stop. Jaden turned the volume down. I didn't want everyone to know, he said quietly. I know, his mom replied. But sometimes stories like yours make people think. Maybe it'll stop it from happening to someone else. He nodded slowly. He didn't feel angry anymore, just thoughtful. The fear was still there, but so was a new kind of understanding. The world wasn't always fair, but maybe, just maybe, people could learn from moments like this. Before going to bed, he looked out the window again. The street was calm, the same as always, but now it felt different to him, like the air itself carried something heavier, something real. He whispered to himself, tomorrow will be better. What he didn't know was that tomorrow would bring even more attention. Neighbors, reporters, and eventually the officers themselves. The truth had started to surface, and it was only the beginning of something bigger than he could imagine. The next morning started quietly. The sky was gray and a light drizzle tapped against the window. Jaden sat at the kitchen table, staring at his cereal without really eating. His mom, Agent Carter, was already dressed for work, though she looked more focused than usual. She had spent part of the night reviewing her report, reading through every detail before sending it to the Internal Affairs office. When she noticed Jaden staring off, she spoke gently. Did you sleep okay? He nodded a little, though his eyes said otherwise. Yeah, just weird dreams. She sat down across from him. That's normal. Something like that can stay in your head for a while. He looked up at her. I keep thinking about how fast it all happened. I didn't even do anything, her face softened. You shouldn't have had to go through that, and I'm not going to let it slide. He didn't respond right away. Part of him was proud that she was standing up for him, but another part was nervous about the attention it was already getting. He had seen some of the comments online the night before. Strangers talking about him like they knew his whole life. Others arguing about what had really happened. It was strange and uncomfortable. His mom poured herself another cup of coffee. I'm meeting with the police chief this afternoon, she said. He wants to discuss the report. Jaden looked surprised. That fast? Yes, she said. Once something like this goes public, they move quickly. They don't want bad press. She checked her watch and stood up. I'll keep you posted, all right? Just stay home today. Take a break. He nodded quietly and she left for work. The house felt too quiet once she was gone. Jaden turned on the TV just for some background noise, flipping through channels until he landed on a local news segment. His heart skipped when he heard the anchor mention his neighborhood. The reporter stood near the same street corner where everything had happened. Yesterday evening, a video showing a local teen being stopped by police without clear cause went viral, she said. The department has confirmed an internal review is underway. Jaden muted the TV and leaned back on the couch. It was strange seeing his street on the screen. The place that had always felt safe now turned into a story. He didn't want fame or attention. He just wanted normal life again. Around noon, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his friend Leo. "Bro, your mom's at the station. I think she's on the news later. They said she's FBI or something?" Jaden sighed. He had tried not to tell too many people what his mom did, but it was hard to keep that quiet now. She wasn't just some office worker. She was an FBI field agent known for her professionalism and calm nature. Everyone at her bureau respected her, and now the same calmness was what made people listen to her story. Meanwhile, across town, Agent Carter walked into the police station again. The atmosphere was different this time. The officers she passed lowered their voices when she walked by. The chief's assistant led her straight to a conference room. Inside, the police chief stood waiting. He was polite but visibly tense. "Agent Carter," he said. "Thank you for coming in." She shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for making time." They both sat down. The chief began. "First, I want to say that what happened to your son was regrettable. The officers involved were following what they believed was a valid lead, but it's clear there were errors." "Errors?" she repeated quietly. "My son was detained and searched without cause." "That's not an error, it's poor judgment." The chief nodded slowly. "I understand your frustration. We're reviewing body cam footage. I assure you we'll take appropriate action." She leaned forward. "With respect, this isn't just about action. It's about training, mindset, and responsibility. If this can happen to a respectful teenager walking home, it can happen to anyone." The chief sighed. "We're not blind to that. Things are changing, but not as fast as they should." For a moment, there was silence. Then he said, "We'd like to make a public statement today, clarify what happened, and express our regret. It might help calm the situation." She agreed, but only under one condition, that they told the truth. No excuses, no watered-down version. Back at home, Jaden's phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from a local news page. There was a live video starting soon. Police department press conference regarding viral teen stop. He hesitated, then clicked it. The video showed a small podium outside the police building. The chief stood behind it, and next to him was his mother in her dark suit, calm as always. Reporters gathered around holding microphones and cameras. The chief spoke first. "Yesterday, a young man was stopped by officers in what was later determined to be a mistaken identification. The department regrets the distress caused by this encounter. We are reviewing our procedures to ensure this does not happen again." Then his mom stepped forward. "As both a parent and a federal agent, I know the challenges officers face. But I also know what fairness and accountability look like. My son was respectful, compliant, and still treated as a suspect. That's not acceptable. I'm speaking not just as his mother, but for every family who deserves better." Jaden felt something shift inside him as he watched. Pride mixed with sadness. She wasn't just defending him, she was speaking for something larger. The comments section flooded with support. People writing things like, "She said it perfectly and we need more parents like her." After the conference, she returned home. Jaden met her at the door. "I saw it," he said quietly. "You were amazing." She smiled gently. "It wasn't about me." "I know," he said. "But it mattered." They sat together for a while without saying much. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, like they both understood something deeper now. Later that evening, a knock came at the door. It was one of the officers from the night of the stop. He stood there awkwardly, holding his hat in his hands. "Agent Carter," he said. "I just wanted to apologize to you and your son personally. We made a bad call." Jaden froze, unsure how to react. His mom nodded calmly. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It takes character to admit when something went wrong." The officer looked at Jaden. "I'm sorry, kid. I should have listened." Jaden nodded slowly. "Okay," he said softly. The officer left after that, and Jaden closed the door quietly. His mom turned to him. "How do you feel?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Better, I guess. Still weird." "That's normal," she said. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, it just helps you move forward. That night, the rain stopped and the air outside felt lighter. Jaden sat by his window again, watching the streetlights flicker. For the first time in days, he didn't feel scared walking out there in his mind. He thought about what his mom said at the press conference about fairness and accountability. Maybe people would remember her words. Maybe things could change even just a little. Before going to bed, he got another message from his coach. Saw the news. Proud of how you handled everything. Come back to practice when you're ready. Jaden smiled for the first time in a while. He typed back, "Thanks, coach. See you soon." He turned off his light, feeling calmer than he had in days. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet again. But this time, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace slowly returning. And though he didn't know what would come next, the meetings, the reviews, or how the world might respond, he finally believed that what happened to him could mean something good for others. Sometimes change begins in the most unexpected ways, and that night he knew his story was only just beginning to make a difference. A few days had passed since the press conference, but the story hadn't faded. Reporters kept calling, and people from all over the city were still talking about what happened. Some were angry at the officers, others praised Jaden's mother for how she handled everything. The local paper even ran a headline that read, "FBI agent speaks out after son wrongly stopped by police." At first, Jaden didn't know what to think. It was strange seeing his mom's name everywhere, hearing neighbors whisper when he walked by, watching people online debate what had happened to him. But as the days went on, something changed. More people started sharing stories of their own, similar things that had happened to their kids or neighbors. It made him realize how many people carried silent experiences like his. Still, the attention made home life a little tense. Jaden just wanted things to go back to normal. He wanted to walk home without thinking about who might be watching. One afternoon, he sat in the living room, scrolling through messages. A reporter had sent him a request for an interview, and another one had messaged his coach. He didn't answer either. His mom noticed him frowning at his phone and asked gently, "More messages?" He nodded. "Yeah, they want me to talk about what happened." "I don't know what to say." She sat beside him. "You don't have to say anything if you're not ready. You've already lived through it, that's enough." He looked down. "But you spoke up." "Maybe I should too." She thought for a moment. "If you speak, do it because you want to help someone else, not because people expect it." The truth doesn't need noise, it needs heart. Her words stuck with him. That evening, she had to attend a meeting at the community center. The local police were hosting a forum to discuss trust between officers and residents, and she'd been invited as both a parent and a federal agent. She didn't usually speak at community events, but this one felt important. "Come with me," she told Jaden. "You don't have to talk, just listen." He hesitated but agreed. When they arrived, the gym was full. Folding chairs lined the floor, and people of all ages sat quietly, waiting for the meeting to begin. On one side sat police officers in uniform, including the chief. On the other, families, students, and community leaders filled the seats. The air was thick with unspoken tension. The moderator welcomed everyone and explained that the purpose of the meeting was understanding, not blame. One by one, people stood up to share their thoughts. A mother talked about how her son was stopped on his way home from work. A retired teacher said he'd seen too many kids grow afraid of people meant to protect them. Then the chief stood to speak. "We know trust takes time," he said. "We can't fix the past, but we can listen and do better." When he finished, the moderator looked toward Agent Carter. "Would you like to say something?" She stood calm and confident. The room went silent. "I don't stand here as an FBI agent tonight," she began. "I stand here as a mother who watched her child come home shaken and confused after doing nothing wrong. What happened to my son could have been anyone's child, and that's what needs to change." People nodded quietly. Her tone wasn't angry, but it carried weight. "We all want the same thing: safety, respect, understanding. Those goals don't compete with each other. They depend on each other." Jaden watched from his seat, proud but emotional. Seeing his mom speak with such calm strength made him realize how much courage it took to turn pain into purpose. After she finished, the room filled with quiet applause. Even some of the officers nodded respectfully. One of them, the younger officer who had come to apologize days earlier, approached her afterward. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I think everyone here needed to hear that." She shook his hand. "Then let's make sure it doesn't end with words." Jaden walked beside her as they left the building. Outside, the night air was cool and still. Streetlights reflected off small puddles from an earlier rain. He looked up at her. "You were amazing," she smiled. "It's not about being amazing. It's about being honest," he nodded. "I get that now." The next morning, things felt a little lighter. Jaden went back to school, and though people still talked about what happened, the tone had changed. Instead of pity or gossip, most people just showed quiet respect. His coach clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Good to have you back, kid." At practice, he felt a rush of normalcy again, the sound of sneakers squeaking, the ball hitting the court, teammates laughing. It was the first time in days that he felt free from the weight of it all. After practice, as he walked home, he noticed a few neighbors outside talking. One of them waved at him. Another smiled and said, "Good to see you out again, Jaden." For the first time, he didn't feel nervous walking down that street. He felt seen, but in a good way this time. When he reached home, his mom was on the porch sitting with a folder in her lap. "How was practice?" she asked. "It was good," he said, dropping his bag beside the chair. "I think I needed it," she nodded. "I know that feeling." They sat in silence for a bit, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood, the distant hum of cars, the laughter of kids playing down the street, the soft rustle of leaves. It was peaceful again, the kind of peace that feels earned. Then his mom said quietly, "The department invited me to join a review board for community relations. They want help improving how officers handle stops like yours." He looked at her. "You're going to do it, right?" She smiled faintly. "Of course. Change starts where courage meets opportunity." He smiled too. "You should put that on a t-shirt." They both laughed. And for the first time in days, it was genuine. Easy laughter, the kind that breaks through all the heaviness. Later that evening, as the sky turned orange, his mom got a phone call. She stepped aside to answer, her tone professional. Jaden didn't listen closely at first, but when she hung up, she looked thoughtful. "Who was it?" he asked. "The mayor's office," she said. "They want to recognize both of us at next week's city event, for speaking up." Jaden blinked. "Us," she nodded. "They said your story reminded people why honesty and calm matter." He felt shy at the thought. "I don't think I did anything special." She shook her head. "You did everything right. You stayed calm when others wouldn't have. That matters," he didn't argue. Deep down, he knew she meant it. That night, as he lay in bed, he scrolled through his phone again. The video that had once made him anxious was now being shared for a different reason. People were calling it a story of grace under pressure. Others used it as an example of how to respond with courage instead of anger. He smiled faintly. For the first time since everything began, he felt proud, not just of himself, but of what the moment had become. Across the hall, his mom worked quietly in her office, typing up a proposal for the new community program. She paused for a moment, looking at a picture of Jaden on her desk, him in his basketball jersey, smiling with bright confidence. She whispered softly, "You taught them something too, kid." The week passed quickly, filled with new conversations, positive messages, and quiet healing. Jaden began to see how something painful could grow into something meaningful. His mom's bravery had started it, but the compassion of others was helping carry it forward. And even though he still had moments of doubt, he knew one thing for sure. He would never forget the night that changed him. Not because of fear, but because of what it taught him. That respect, courage, and understanding can rewrite even the hardest stories. As the weekend arrived, the city prepared for the upcoming event. Flyers were posted around town. Local students were invited, and Jaden's coach even mentioned it at practice. Everyone wanted to hear from the woman who stood up for her son, and the boy who stayed calm when everything could have gone wrong. On the night before the ceremony, Jaden stood outside for a long time looking at the stars. His mom joined him quietly. "You ready for tomorrow?" she asked. He shrugged, smiling a little. "Not really, but maybe that's okay." She looked at him proudly. "You've already done the hardest part, living the truth." They stood there together in silence, side by side, the porch light glowing softly around them. And for the first time since that night, the world felt right again. The morning of the city event arrived bright and calm. The sun rose over the neighborhood, spilling light across quiet streets that, just a few days ago, had felt tense and heavy. Jaden woke up early, his heart fluttering with a mix of nerves and curiosity. He had never been part of anything like this before. The idea of being recognized in front of a crowd made him uneasy, but he also felt a quiet pride. He went downstairs to find his mom already in the kitchen, reviewing a few notes on her tablet. "Morning, kiddo," she said, smiling. "You ready?" "I think so," he said, trying to sound confident. She set the tablet aside and looked at him with steady eyes. "Just remember, the hardest part is behind you. Today it's just about sharing your experience and what you learned. Nothing more, nothing less," he nodded, trying to absorb her calm energy. She had been his anchor throughout this whole experience, from the night he was stopped to the press conference to the community meeting. Her presence had made him feel safe even when everything felt uncertain. By mid-morning, the venue was buzzing. Families, students, local leaders, and reporters filled the small auditorium. A stage had been set up with a podium and banners along the walls read, "Building Trust Through Understanding." Jaden held his mom's hand as they walked toward the seating area. His palms were slightly sweaty, but her grip was firm and reassuring. They sat near the front. The moderator welcomed everyone and spoke briefly about the purpose of the event: to encourage dialogue between residents and the police, and to share experiences that could improve understanding. Jaden listened quietly as people from different backgrounds shared their thoughts. Some spoke of fear, some of frustration, but many spoke of hope. The hope that communities and law enforcement could work together better. When it was their turn, his mom stood at the podium first. She didn't raise her voice or show anger. She simply spoke from the heart. "I am here today as a mother, as an FBI agent, and as a member of this community," she began. "Recently, my son was stopped by local police while walking home from practice. He did nothing wrong, yet he was treated like a suspect. It was a confusing and frightening experience for him, and it could have happened to any child." The room was silent. Everyone was listening. "I am not here to condemn anyone personally," she continued. "I am here to show that accountability, respect, and clear communication can prevent fear and misunderstanding." My son stayed calm. He followed instructions. He did what he was taught, to be respectful, to remain composed. And yet the system failed him in that moment. She paused for a moment and looked toward Jaden, who was standing quietly beside her. He stayed calm. He acted with courage and dignity. "That is why we are here. Not to dwell on mistakes, but to show what can happen when fairness meets understanding." Jaden's heart pounded, but he felt a sense of warmth and courage spread through him. He realized his mom was not just defending him. She was giving everyone in the room a lesson about compassion, courage, and speaking up. When she stepped back, the moderator gestured toward Jaden. "Would you like to say a few words?" He hesitated. All eyes were on him. The bright lights, the faces looking up, he felt a small wave of fear. But then he saw his mom's reassuring nod. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. I don't really know what to say," he started softly. "I just want to say that staying calm and respectful can make a difference. Even when something scary happens, even when people treat you unfairly, you can still control how you respond." He looked around the room, meeting eyes with students, parents, and officers alike. "I was lucky. My mom was there. She helped me feel safe. And I hope that by sharing my story, maybe other kids and families can feel safer too. And maybe officers can think about how they stop people and treat them, because everyone deserves respect." There was a quiet moment, then a wave of applause. Jaden felt his face heat up, but it wasn't embarrassment, it was relief. He had spoken. His voice was heard. His story mattered. After the applause, his mom stepped back to his side and gave him a proud smile. "See? That wasn't so bad," she whispered. He smiled back, feeling lighter than he had in days. The rest of the event went smoothly. People came up afterward to thank them, to shake their hands, to share their own experiences. Jaden realized that what had felt so isolating at first, being stopped, being watched, being misunderstood, had turned into something larger. His story was not just about fear or anger. It had become a lesson in courage, fairness, and community. After the event, as they walked back to their car, his mom looked at him. "You did really well today," she said. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. She shook her head gently. "No, you did it yourself. I was just there to guide you. You made choices. You stayed calm. That's what mattered." He thought about the past few days, the fear, the anger, the uncertainty. And now, standing here with her, seeing people listening and learning, he realized how much had changed. Not just for him, but for everyone who had witnessed their story. On the drive home, they talked quietly. His mom explained how she planned to continue working with the department to improve procedures and training. She wanted to make sure other children would not feel the same fear he had felt. Jaden listened, absorbing every word. He had a new understanding of how much work it took to make change, and he felt inspired to help in his own way, even if it was just speaking calmly and respectfully in difficult moments. At home, Jaden went to his room and sat at his desk. He looked out the window at the quiet street, thinking about the night it all began. It seemed like a lifetime ago. The fear he had felt was still there in his memory, but it didn't feel as heavy. It had been transformed into a lesson. He understood now that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. His mom knocked softly on his door. "Hey, you okay?" "I'm good," he said, smiling. She came in and sat beside him. "You've grown a lot through all of this," she said. "And I hope you know something important. Your experiences, your voice, and your choices matter. Not just to me, but to everyone who might face a similar situation." He nodded, thinking about the community event, the applause, the people who had come up to speak with him. He realized he didn't feel small or powerless anymore. He felt capable of facing challenges and making a difference even in small ways. That evening, they had dinner together as a family. The atmosphere was calm, warm, and normal in a way it hadn't been in a while. They laughed, shared stories from the day, and talked about what might come next. Jaden felt the tension of the past week melting away, replaced with a quiet sense of hope. Later, as he got ready for bed, he reflected on everything. The officers who had stopped him had made mistakes. The fear he had felt was real, but now looking back he realized how much courage and patience had carried him through. He thought about the community meeting, the press conference, the event today about how his mom had guided him, protected him, and used her voice to create understanding. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I'm ready for the next challenge. I can handle it." And in the quiet of the night, the house felt safe again. Not just because of the walls or the doors, but because of the courage, love, and understanding that filled it. Jaden knew that what had started as a frightening experience had turned into something meaningful, a story of resilience, respect, and hope. It was a story he would carry with him for the rest of his life. A story that reminded him that even in moments of fear or injustice, there could be lessons, growth, and change. And that with honesty, courage, and calm, one small act could ripple outward to make the world a little better for everyone. And for Jaden, that was more than enough.